I was asked to give a short presentation on our new Build on L2 platform. And the topic was kind of anything that I was excited about in Lightning. And so, yeah, liquidity ads was my choice of topic. And um, there's, I don't know, quite a lot going on right now in Lightning Network spec development. There's Taproot channels coming online, Musig 2, and all the benefits that that'll offer. There's a lot of privacy discussion in terms of breaking the channel to UTXO linkage that kind of doxes your on-chain funds and history there. We're working on LN symmetry or L2. Greg Sanders is currently. That's really exciting. I think that'll offer a lot of benefits. But all of that aside, I was still most excited to talk about liquidity ads. I think they're criminally underappreciated, and so I thought today I would give just kind of a little bit of a high-level discussion on what are the benefits and just kind of more of the philosophy of why we ought to be excited about something like this. So I think I'll start with just as you're explaining the Lightning Network to someone, the historical example was the bar tab, right? So this is where Bob is running a bar and Alice wants to buy a drink. So instead of doing an individual transaction each time, she just opens up a tab, and that's like our Lightning channel. So we've got our Lightning channel funded. Maybe Alice buys a single drink, and then over the night she buys a couple more. The tab is updated. That's our commitment signatures each time. And then at the end of the night, that's finally settled in one fell swoop. And that could be, going on chain, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. I think that analogy was kind of helpful in the very beginning, but now that we've got actual use cases for the Lightning Network and people see regular payments flowing on it, it quickly breaks down. And now we're just talking about something more similar to like IP packets routed over the internet. And in an example like this, you're already talking about how you might interface with an ISP, and that connection now can go both ways and get you access to the entirety of the network. And under that sort of model, people just understand it as, this is my wallet, I'm connected to the network, and I want to send and receive as many times as possible. And so that's a little bit different than just the very trivial bar tab analogy, and it needs a little bit more effort to get there, because now we're talking about liquidity in both directions. So not just a single side funded by the opener of the channel, but liquidity to receive payments as well. And as soon as we start talking about that kind of functionality, there's a lot of ways to achieve it. And so I think we should start by just discussing what are some of those ways, and kind of who's working on building this capacity into the Lightning Network. So I think there's generally three broad categories, as I would describe it. I don't know if that's the most appropriate way to describe it, but at least conceptually for me it works. So this is the most fundamental one is the Lightning Network spec. So this is the bolts, and those building on this are mainly the implementations. So this would be like Eclair, LDK, LND, and of course Core Lightning. This is a process that it goes through a series anytime we want to add anything to the spec. Generally, one of the implementations proposes an addition to the spec, they'll submit a pull request. They typically demonstrate it first on their own implementation. So this could be an optional or experimental feature that they're interested in. Then a second implementation comes along and says, yeah, I'd like that too. So they go with the documentation that's been provided so far, try to just pick up the ball and run with it, see if they can implement everything that's needed based on that. A lot of times there are some pain points. They'll say, hey, I think it would be more efficient if we modified it a little bit to do this or that. But ultimately they get more or less where they need to be, and then they try interoperability testing. So it's one thing to have your own feature work among nodes of the same implementation, but now can you actually talk to another node of a different implementation and successfully use that feature? So once that's done, then the proposal is kind of ratified, or it's just really the PR is merged and it becomes a part of the official spec. So now anyone that wants to, say they wanted to write a Lightning Network implementation from scratch, they would have everything that would be needed to recreate that. And it's really nice having that spec process, I think. Being a developer working on this, it's really useful to be able to see exactly what was the rationale behind it, exactly what are the steps needed to implement it, without having to just delve into source code to kind of try and reverse engineer all of that. So that's the spec process, and those are the major Lightning implementers working on it. The next kind of broad category, I would say, are the other developers and entrepreneurs that are kind of building on top of this. So in that, I would say things like liquidity tools, additional protocols, or LSPs, Lightning service providers, would fit in that category. So I would think of Loop, Thor, Bolts, or let's see, we've got Amboss with Magma, or Voltage with Flow. So these are all additional liquidity tools that are provided by entrepreneurs who are trying to serve this segment of this need in the market space. We've also got other protocols that are kind of built on top. So LNURL, LNBits, even the podcasting 2.0 feature. That's built kind of into Lightning, but it's an optional feature that you have to manually enable and support. I think we could talk about PeerSwap somewhere in here as well. And also maybe like the Xiaomi and Mints. But yeah, so there's this whole ecosystem where it's not strictly part of the spec, but there's people building on top of this, all of these additional functionality. And then finally, there are the users themselves. And so I think early on, this was the best way to get inbound liquidity, which is what Liquidity Ads is basically trying to do for you. And so we had, very early on, things like the liquidity triangles, PlebNet, that sort of thing. There were, automated tools for rebalancing and getting some inbound liquidity on your channels. Or even just, if you personally know a friend with a node, you can swap on-chain funds for channel liquidity. So yeah, I think the lines between these three different groups are very fluid. But I guess the benefit that Liquidity Ads has is that its goal is to become part of the base protocol, part of the spec. And I think what that fundamentally does is it kind of lowers the barrier to entry when any node implementation is suddenly interoperable and has the ability to receive that inbound capacity on their channels. Okay, so let's talk about what are liquidity ads. there, I'm gonna see if I can share my screen. All right, so here we are at the spec. So this is on GitHub. This is lightning/bolts, and this will get you the lightning spec. So if we go to pull requests, we can check out, here's the Liquidity Ads PR. So this was from about 1.5 years ago. And so yeah, you can read all about the details of the spec, but we'll just kind of discuss the high level. And so this is built on top, I'll go back. This is built on top of dual funding. So dual funding was a way to open channels where both sides could contribute funding instead of just a single-sided contribution. But this has a bit of a coordination problem. So how do you know how much funding to add, who's willing to do this, that sort of thing. So what it needs now is a way to say, hey, here I am, I'm willing to contribute funding if you want to open a channel with me. So if we check out this commit, and this has been open for a while, there's been a lot of discussion, so I'm going to kind of breeze past a lot of this. So let's see, yeah, these are all interesting details, but the gist of it is kind of this key point right here. So we've got the node announcement. Now this is part of the gossip. So anytime your node comes online, you need to let all the other nodes know, hey, this is where, this is how you can reach me. And so your node sends out this announcement. It says, here I am. Here's the features that I support. Here's my addresses, my alias, favorite color, all the good details. This particular message is sent out periodically, so at least every 2 weeks. It's always kept fairly current. And so part of the liquidity ads is to add a feature bit to this node announcement that says, hey, I support liquidity ads. And so that way you can identify which nodes that you'd like to connect to and use this feature. And in order to provide all of the details on what specifically that entails, you've got this extra TLB field in here. And so it has these extra bits of data that describe the, basically what your fee is for providing this liquidity, kind of the maximum transaction size that you're willing to support. And then supposing someone opens a channel and gets some inbound liquidity for you, you don't want to raise the fees such that it would be unusable, right? So they want some sort of guarantee that, hey, what's the maximum fee that you're going to charge me for inbound routing over this channel? And so that's what these fields are here. So this is kind of the bare minimum that you need to know in order to open a channel. So let's see. The other kind of interesting detail, I think, is, I believe it's back here. Yeah, so this is on your lease channel. This is under Bolt 3 transactions. It adds this, extra delay so that you're actually with this op CSV, and that's what actually makes it so that the least liquidity actually stays locked up for like 4,000 blocks. It's a fixed period of time, just so that it makes it easy for everyone to kind of come to an agreement. Yeah, so let's see, I will go ahead and drop that in the chat as well for anyone following along. And yeah, so the point of this is that we really just want a peer-to-peer based solution for opening balance channels. It offers a lot of benefits, but primarily we get the efficiency gain of opening a channel and having it already useful bidirectionally. Again, there's multiple ways to solve this. You could do the liquidity triangle, but that takes additional coordination where you have to communicate with node runners out of band and potentially docs your node ID and that sort of thing. But this is all like part of the base protocol, and having it part of the protocol means that there's no additional interactivity required. It also uses a market-based approach. So this way you can set your own fees, you can set your own, the channel size that you want to support, and people can choose whichever nodes they would like to lease a channel from, and do it in this open marketplace. But I think more than that, it's this is kind of a way to do this in a maximally decentralized manner. I think these other liquidity tools are really incredible. I'm really supportive of the entrepreneurs that are building all these external tools to purchase an incoming channel with extra liquidity or rebalance your channels. That's great, but to the extent that we can, we ought to maintain the ability to do this in a decentralized manner. So that's what the Liquidity Ads brings to the table. And then I think finally one of the coolest points about it is that we're kind of breaking this heuristic related to inputs for a channel, and now we actually have two inputs being provided, and there's a couple of change addresses, but now we've introduced some sort of ambiguity about, well, which node was it that actually provided which input. So breaking that link of the UTXO's history to prior transactions, I think is really important. You've basically got a little coin join in each channel open this way. Have I got any questions about any of this so far? I'm just kind of rolling through it. I think there's a lot of reasons to be excited for this, but yes, okay, I'll get to that one in just a little bit. But yeah, I'm glad you asked. Thank you, Prochronist. The question was if there's a user-friendly GUI to access this, or if it's via CLI. And yeah, I think it's a little of both, but there is some progress being made. But yeah, before I get to that, I think maybe just a slight discussion on the role that the protocols play. And depending on how the protocol is written, it can have a strong impact on the level of decentralization that's created in the network behind it. So just thinking of a couple really easy examples here. The Internet Protocol, or TCP/IP. This has been around for a while. It's generally open enough, but it does have its problems. Primarily, it's dependent on a DNS service, And also it outsources routing typically to an ISP. So this is when we're building a network from scratch, these are things that we want to avoid to keep it as maximally peer-to-peer as possible. Again, it's not a problem for many of the users around the world, but just creating this potential for denial of access, censorship, surveillance are all things that we want to avoid. Additionally, just having the backbone nodes centralizes it in such a way that now it's possible to create a great firewall type of scenario where it's just easy to choke off access. And then the other one that we've got, the email protocol comes to mind. This one, I think it's kind of fascinating because it's a pretty open and permissive protocol, but the problem comes when you have spam being sent over it, and the primary way to remediate this is for email providers to basically just blacklist anyone connected to them who hasn't already been on the network for a long time and isn't they basically got a whitelist of, hey, these email service providers are okay, or these email servers are acceptable. And but if you're new, trying to spin up a new email node, good luck getting anyone to route your traffic. So yeah, I was just looking up some basic stats on this, and it's kind of hard on open protocols to get really detailed statistics, but the latest commercial stats that I saw were Microsoft Exchange accounted for 34% of commercial email traffic, and Gmail was another 34%. So we've already got 2/3 of the network is controlled by just two nodes, basically. And then I found just for overall emails opened in general, Gmail accounted for 27%. But when you look at the 18 to 29 demographic, it's 61%. So this problem is only going to be magnified in future years, is kind of what this indicates to me. And yeah, it's so bad that you can see there was some discussion just recently about how bad the like Amazon.com UX is, where they strip all of the payment detail from your emails just so that Google can't harvest all of this data. So yeah, these are all things that we definitely want to avoid, and try to keep the network as peer-to-peer as possible. Okay, so we talked about dual funding. Dual funding was kind of the prerequisite to liquidity ads, and it does help break the heuristic by doing a coin join in each dual funding open. But it also, liquidity ads kind of enables dual funding to actually be used. And this is great because dual funding is useful for other things. It really paves the way for channel splicing, which, if anyone has followed Dusty's work on splicing, it's a lot of the same sort of issues. So now you're taking you're creating a new channel, essentially. It's notionally the same as the old channel, but as one of the inputs to that channel, it's the UTXO spent by the original channel. But now you either add additional inputs, or you get a change output, or there's all sorts of ways you could do splicing, but the workflow is all basically building off of dual funding. So just it's another kind of follow-on benefit to this this whole line of work in getting dual funding and liquidity ads supported by the Lightning Network spec. Okay, and yeah, so I think that's my basic spiel on why I'm super excited for this to get adopted. Let's go now into just a little bit of the actual usage, and hopefully I'll cover your GUI question. And let's see, liquidity ads is like Amboss or Magma and Voltage. If so, what's the difference between these services and liquidity ads? Yeah, so I think in general the difference is going to be that it's more privacy preserving to do this at a spec level, because you don't have to interact with a third party outside of this. You basically just advertise that feature bit in your node announcement, and or if you're just interested in purchasing inbound liquidity from someone else, you can basically just initiate this channel open directly with them, provided you. So the steps are essentially you read their liquidity ad advertisement, and you choose which one. Let's go ahead and I've got a screenshot that might be useful for this. Okay, so this is the Ride the Lightning dashboard for on my core Lightning node, and this is what Shahana Faruqi works on. But she has added in a page where you can basically just browse all of the liquidity ads that are being announced. So it's got some nice filtering mechanisms. You can sort it by fee or lease fee, and we can just kind of walk through this. But basically, the lease fee is when you want to open the channel. This is how much you're going to pay in the base fee, and then for each bit of for each additional SAT of liquidity, what percentage of that are you paying for? And then the routing fee, again, that's their limits on the maximal fees they will provide, or they will charge to route inbound to your node. And this channel opening fee, this is just an aggregate of the lease fee. So you can input here the amount that you want to lease from the channel. And typically, if you're wanting a balanced channel, then this would be about half of the channel total. But yeah, so this is just doing the math for you. Here's the aggregate of what you'll pay, a couple thousand sats, something like that, to purchase this inbound liquidity. And yeah, so I guess under routing fee, what is the PPM? Yeah, so that's parts per million. And so if this, like, say 1,000 ppm, if you were routing 1,000 sats, there would be a 1 sat fee to use that channel hop. So that's just part of the normal routing, and that might be a good time to, let's see, to discuss the particular settings. So if you've never played with this before, these are some of the configuration settings that will kind of get you up and running and get you started. And I will just drop this in the chat as well if anyone wants to follow along at home. So yeah, at least early on you needed the experimental features flag enabled when you compiled. I'm not certain if that's still true actually in the latest release, but generally helpful. Enable the dual funding here. And let's see, then generally you would have your settings something like this, where your policy is that, okay, and so this is, these are all the settings for what you want to advertise to others, right? If you're wanting to purchase liquidity from someone else, you know, those options, you'd have to look up their specific ad, and, you know, these would show up, you know, back here under the rates and everything. But if you're wanting to set your own rates, you'd say, okay, I'm going to match whatever they request. I'm going to, you know, provide 100% of that. And we'll get into later why you might want to change that a bit. So let's see. Here's your fees that you're going to charge for contributing to this this dual funding open. So you know, I've got a base fee set here of 500 sats, and then this is the lease fee basis. So basis points are hundredths of a percent. So this is, you know, fairly minimal, but depending on, you know, if as you request more and more funds, there ought to be kind of a proportional cost to locking up your own funds into someone else's channel. And that's kind of what that covers. So here we've got, these are again your maximal channel fees that you'll charge for routing out over that channel to the peer. You don't want to purchase from someone if they've set this, you know, disproportionately high. And again, so this is in thousandths, and this gets translated to, you know, parts per million ultimately on the channel. This is a rather high fee. So, but this doesn't have to be your, you know, you don't have to stick to this. This is just the absolute maximum. So perhaps consider, you know, if your channel gets really imbalanced, or you know, you otherwise don't want to route over a specific channel, you know, what's the maximum you might want to set over the duration of that lease. Okay, I think this one's pretty important. I'm not sure if this one really gets covered in the Medium article, but I would definitely recommend setting the per channel maximum. So here I've got it set to 5 million, I believe. I think these are in MSATs. Yeah. Everything's typically millisatoshi denominated. So this is, I will provide a maximum of 5 million sats to a channel. Assuming they want a balanced channel, they don't just want all inbound liquidity, then, you know, this would allow up to perhaps a 10 million Satoshi channel. And then this one is particularly important. So I've kind of breezed over this, but we actually have we now have all of our funds in our Core Lightning wallet that could potentially be locked up into channels in this manner. So this funder reserve tank parameter says, okay, make sure we keep a little bit in reserve, and that way if I need to shuffle funds around and potentially um, pay for on-chain fees or something, I'll have a little bit left in reserve that I can spend. So don't commit everything. You can also set this if you don't want to. So now each time a channel open is initiated in this way, you're potentially giving away a little bit of information about one of the UTXOs that you're holding in reserve. So this is also a way that you can limit how much information you're sharing there. Don't maybe advertise everything that you've got in your Lightning wallet if that's something that's important to you. Now, ultimately, these all go potentially on chain anyhow, so I'm not sure how important that is, but definitely leaving some funds available for reserve and paying on-chain fees would be wise, I think. Okay, so now we talked before about how you might want to match exactly what the requester is requesting. I think this one's pretty interesting. We have the option here to basically fuzz that amount a little bit. So this fuzz %3 means that we will now, instead of providing exactly the amount, we'll provide between 97 and 100% of what's requested, or of what our policy is. And obviously, if they request 1 million and now we're providing 970,000, but they've already paid the full fee for. It's simultaneous, but they obviously would be a little bit upset if they didn't receive the full amount of the channel capacity they requested. So if you play with the fuzz %, make sure that you also use this policy mod setting as well, which will increase. So now our policy is to provide 105% of what is asked for, meaning that our contribution to this channel open will now be between something like 102 to 105% of what was requested. I'm sure there's some advantages to doing this, but it could be nice to fuzz this a little bit so that you introduce some randomness. And if someone's just trying to probe like what exact UTXOs you have or something of that nature, having that extra fuzz in there means that you can't be real precise with, I want to see something exactly this size. Okay, and so then finally, this is just one of the normal settings for default channel fees. But I think, regardless of what you set for your maximum fee, you probably want to have, the default set so that it doesn't end up being, this 2000 ppm, but something more reasonable to what you'd normally expect. Are those channel fees really enforced? Okay, I'm not 100% certain on that, and I've been meaning to dig into it myself. So yeah, follow that PR, and you can check. I'm not certain that it is enforced, but I would be pretty interested to find out. All right. Have we got any other questions on? Yeah. So I went through that pretty quickly, but those are the general settings that you'll need to configure Liquidity Ads. Have we got any other questions on how they work or the benefits? Certainly, yeah, we can have a follow-up thread on liquidity ads. I'd love to discuss it more. And I will just share. I'll just share the RTL screenshot in case anyone's interested in checking that out. Um, yeah, so if you want to browse the liquidity ads, RTL is a very easy way to do it. Um, in the Medium article, let's see here. So in the Medium article, yeah, it mentions, you can just run list nodes and grep for the option will fund bit, and that will get you the details as well. Now this is definitely the more CLI way to do it. I was playing around with the SQL plugin a week or two ago, just checking out that new feature. And you can run an SQL command for this as well. So I will find that and drop that in the discussion. I mean, if you really want to sort and query based on specific parameters, that would definitely be the way to do it in my book. But yeah, following this guide will get you started there. So yeah, I guess I think that's about all I've got. I guess if I had to kind of summarize it, I think the liquidity triangles that users have been using since the beginning of the Lightning Network were pretty innovative, and they work, and it creates kind of a nice community around it. I'm really excited to see all the entrepreneurs building all of these services to help with these pain points as well. But ultimately, in the end, personally, I want to see this network grow and maintain its decentralized nature to the full extent possible. And in order to see that end, I think the liquidity ads will provide the really decentralized way that any new shop owner can come online and these like GUI tools are still kind of being fleshed out. They're not quite fully featured yet, but I think as this gets adopted by the spec and as more implementations start using it and more node runners start providing this feature, it will make a really easy onboarding process where there's an open marketplace. It's all built into the protocol. You don't have to dox your node ID to anyone. You don't have to connect to a major centralized hub node. You can just do it in a totally peer-to-peer organic manner. And that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm excited about. So I hope you guys are excited for that as well. All right. Well, thank you for joining me. Yeah, I don't know about LND. Eclair is definitely interested. They have dual funding. I think that interoperability testing is basically done. The PR for dual funding hasn't been merged just yet, but I'm not sure that there's any holdups. So as soon as dual funding is merged, I think, yeah, I know they're definitely interested in liquidity ads, and I'm hopeful that the interop there will be done soon as well. All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Till next time.